Some mysteries are just too dazzling to forget, like the lost city of Atlantis or the mysterious disappearance of Emilio Earhart. And then there's the enigma of the Amber Room. A room so beautiful it was called the eighth wonder of the world. Imagine an entire room carved from amber and gold, glowing like sunlight frozen in time. It was stolen by the Nazis during World War II and vanished into legend. Was it destroyed in a fire, lost beneath the sea, or hidden in some forgotten vault waiting to be uncovered? The Amber Room is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, and tonight we journey into the shadows of the past to uncover its secrets. We'll follow clues left behind by the Nazis and explore the bizarre theories that surround the Amber Room's disappearance. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the stories that history tried to bury. The story of the Amber Room begins not with its disappearance, but with its dazzling birth, a creation so extraordinary that it would come to be called the eighth wonder of the world. To understand the mystery, we must first step back 3 centuries, into the courts of Europe, where rulers sought to outshine one another with power, wealth, and spectacle. Picture the year 1701. The heir in Prussia is charged with ambition. Frederick I, the newly crowned king of Prussia, yearned to elevate his kingdom's prestige. In a time when rulers measured their greatness through art, architecture, and treasures, Frederick wanted something that would make the courts of Europe whisper in awe. Gold was common, marble was everywhere, but amber, ancient, radiant, was something altogether different. Unlike gold, amber seemed alive. It glowed not with cold brilliance, but with a warmth that hinted at the secrets of time itself, fossilized tree resin, millions of years old, polished until it captured the light like frozen fire. Frederick commissioned master artisans from Denmark and Prussia to design a chamber where every wall would be covered in this precious substance. They labored for years, piecing together panels, mosaics, gilded carvings, and mirrors until the room became a masterpiece of light and illusion when candles were lit. Inside, the amber seemed to shimmer as though the walls themselves were breathing. Visitors who entered the chamber described the sensation as overwhelming, like stepping into the heart of a jewel. And yet, fate had other plans. Frederick's successors were less enchanted with the creation. To some, it was a burden, an unfinished project, a curiosity too fragile and impractical for a king's palace. For a time, the amber panels were stored away, forgotten by all but a few. The Amber Room might have remained a neglected treasure if not for politics. In 1716, Frederick's son, King Frederick William I of Prussia, sought an alliance with Russia. Tsar Peter the Great had come to Prussia to study European culture and military innovations. The Tsar was a towering figure, curious, energetic, and determined to modernize his empire. When he laid eyes on the Amber Room, he was transfixed. For Peter, who loved unusual curiosities and grand statements of power, this glittering chamber was irresistible. Frederick William I, more soldier than aesthete, saw the room as an opportunity rather than a treasure. He presented it as a gift to Peter, sealing an alliance between their nations. With that gesture, the Amber Room left Prussia and found its way to Russia, where it would become legendary. Transporting the panels was no small task, crated and shipped across Europe. They eventually arrived in St. Petersburg. There, they were installed in the Winter House before being moved again to Catherine Palace in Tsars, Selo, just outside the capital. It was under the reign of Empress Elizabeth, Peter's daughter, that the Amber Room reached its full glory. Italian craftsmen expanded and enhanced the design, adding gilded details, Florentine mosaics, and intricate carvings until the chamber glowed like a living sun. Contemporaries were stunned. Diplomats and foreign visitors described the room with breathless admiration. One 18th-century poet wrote that stepping inside was like being enveloped in solid light. Another likened it to a portal into the heavens, where the walls themselves seemed to pulse with divine fire. The Amber Room was not merely decoration, it was a statement. It embodied Russia's growing power, its embrace of European artistry, and its ability to command wonders once belonging to other nations. The room became the pride of the Russian Empire, a jewel within a palace of jewels. But beauty has always been fragile, and wealth invites envy. The Amber Room's very brilliance would one day seal its doom, for more than 2 centuries. It endured through the reigns of Tsars and Tsars, through revolutions of art and politics. Even through the storms of the Napoleonic Wars, visitors continued to marvel at its warmth, its strange, almost living glow. Yet by the dawn of the 20th century, shadows gathered, the amber panels, delicate by nature, began to crack and darken with age. Conservators worried about its fragility. Repairs were attempted, but the room's future was uncertain. Then came 1941, Operation Barbarossa. Hitler's armies surged into the Soviet Union with lightning speed. As the Wehrmacht pushed toward Leningrad, treasures of the Russian Empire were hastily hidden or evacuated. But the Amber Room was too fragile, too vast. Conservators tried to dismantle it. But the panels began to crumble. In desperation, they attempted a crude disguise, covering the room with wallpaper to conceal it from approaching soldiers. It was a futile gesture. The invaders knew exactly what they were looking for within days. The Amber Room was discovered. In less than 36 hours, German forces dismantled the panels, packed them into crates, and shipped them back to Königsberg, modern-day Kaliningrad. The 8th wonder of the world had been stolen, and within a few short years, it would vanish altogether. The question that has haunted historians ever since is simple. Where did it go? When the crates containing the Amber Room arrived in Königsberg in late 1941, it was as if history itself had been uprooted. For centuries, the room had embodied the glory of the Russian Empire. Now, in the midst of the most destructive war the world had ever seen, it was paraded as a symbol of Nazi triumph. The German city of Königsberg, perched on the Baltic Sea, was chosen as the Amber Room's new home. Once the seat of Prussian kings, the city was already steeped in history. Crowned by its great castle there, under the supervision of Alfred Rode, the director of the city's museum, the amber panels were unpacked and reassembled. Despite the hurried dismantling in Russia, the chamber's luminous glow returned. For the next years, visitors to Königsberg Castle could once again marvel at the 8th wonder of the world. But by 1943, the war had turned. The Eastern Front had bled Hitler's armies dry, and the Red Army was pushing westward with brutal determination. Allied bombing campaigns ravaged German cities. Königsberg, with its strategic position and military importance, became a target. In August of 1944, disaster struck. A series of British bombing raids set Königsberg ablaze. The castle, that proud fortress where the Amber Room had been displayed, was reduced to ruins. Flames consumed its halls. For days, fires raged unchecked. Witnesses later described seeing the sky glow red, the air thick with smoke and ash. In that inferno, many believed the Amber Room perished. Amber, after all, is nothing more than fossilized resin. Though hardened by time, it is still flammable. Could the wonder of wonders have been reduced to nothing but blackened ash and smoke? That is the simplest explanation. Yet history is rarely so simple. Reports soon emerged that, before the fire, the Amber Room had been packed away once more. Some claimed crates were loaded onto trains heading west to save storage far from the advancing front. Others insisted the Nazis sent treasures onto ships bound for Germany, desperate to keep them from Soviet hands. One story tells of the steamer Wilhelm Gustloff, sunk in January 1945 by a Soviet submarine. More than 9,000 lives were lost in that single tragedy, the greatest maritime disaster in history. Among the wreckage, some whispered, were crates containing the Amber Room. If true, the chamber now rests beneath the icy waters of the Baltic, entombed in darkness. Another theory points to a different vessel, the Karlsruhe, which sank near Poland carrying looted treasures in 2020. Divers investigating the wreck claimed to have found crates and possible amber fragments. Yet even now, no conclusive evidence has surfaced. Still, others believe the Nazis hid the Amber Room in underground tunnels, salt mines, or bunkers, just as they concealed countless other treasures during the final days of the war. Germany was riddled with desperate hiding places, catacombs sealed with explosives, shafts flooded to conceal their contents. The amber panels, wrapped and crated, could lie in one of these forgotten vaults, waiting for discovery. What deepens the mystery further are the post-war testimonies. Some German officers swore that the Amber Room had been destroyed in the bombing. Others, interrogated by Soviet authorities, hinted that it was moved but refused to give details. Alfred Rode himself, the very man who had overseen the display in Königsberg, died suddenly in early 1945, under circumstances some considered suspicious. His knowledge of the chamber's fate, if he ever recorded it, went with him to the grave. The Soviet Union, for its part, was determined to find the lost treasure. As the Red Army swept into East Prussia in 1945, Stalin ordered teams of investigators to locate the Amber Room. Soldiers combed the ruins of Königsberg Castle, sifting through charred debris. They found nothing but fragments, tiny blackened shards, perhaps once part of the panels. But nothing conclusive. The mystery grew colder as the years passed. Königsberg itself was claimed by the Soviet Union and renamed Kaliningrad, a closed city. Its castle eventually demolished in the 1960s under orders from Moscow. If any trace of the Amber Room had survived beneath the rubble, it was lost with the castle's destruction, and yet the legend refused to die. Treasure hunters, amateur historians, even governments poured resources into the search. Each lead seemed promising. Each ended in disappointment, and so the question lingers unanswered. Did the Amber Room perish in the firestorm of Königsberg, or does it still exist, hidden in the shadows of history? Whatever the truth, the disappearance of the Amber Room marked the beginning of something larger. For the longer it remained missing, the more its story transformed from art into myth, from history into mystery. It was no longer just a room. It was a phantom, a ghost that haunted Europe, and as rumors began to spread in the years after the war, some even whispered that the treasure was cursed. The Amber Room's disappearance was not merely a loss of art. It was the birth of a legend. For centuries, it had shimmered with golden light, a jewel of kings and queens, now vanished. It became something dark, an enigma cloaked in rumor, a story laced with fear. And from the ashes of war emerged whispers of a curse, a force that seemed to reach out and claim those who sought to uncover the room's fate. The first shadows of this curse fell upon Alfred Rode, the museum director who had supervised the Amber Room's installation in Königsberg. Rode was an authority on amber, and his position gave him intimate knowledge of the treasure's movements during the war. In 1945, as the Red Army closed in on the city, he died suddenly of typhus. His wife died the very next day, to some. This was a tragic coincidence in a time of widespread disease and chaos. To others, it was something stranger, to guardians of forbidden knowledge silenced at the very moment their testimony could have altered history. Other names followed, General Erich Koch, the Nazi Gauleiter of East Prussia, was believed to have overseen the Amber Room's evacuation after the war. He was captured by the Allies and later handed over to Soviet authorities. He was sentenced to death for war crimes, but his execution was repeatedly postponed. Officially, this was due to his ill health. Unofficially, rumors swirled that the Soviets kept him alive, hoping to extract secrets about the Amber Room's final resting place. Koch never revealed anything. He died in prison in 1986, his silence as much a part of the mystery as the vanished treasure itself. Even after the war, those who tried to hunt for the Amber Room often met with grim fates. In 1970, a German researcher who claimed to have discovered crucial evidence was killed in a car crash on the Sioux. Suspicious circumstances. A Soviet investigator who had pursued the trail into East Germany died suddenly of a stroke after returning from a promising lead. Divers exploring sunken wrecks in the Baltic perished in accidents at sea. Each death might be explained as chance, yet the pattern fed the legend that the Amber Room was not merely lost, but protected by some unseen hand. The stories of the curse captured the imagination of the public, but they also obscured the practical reality. Dozens of serious searches for the Amber Room were being carried out. From the 1960s onward, expeditions fanned out across Europe. Theories abounded. Some said the treasure lay hidden in salt mines deep in Poland. Others pointed to the mountains of Czechoslovakia, where Nazis had constructed labyrinthine bunkers. Still others swore it had been hidden within the ruins of Königsberg Castle, sealed beneath the rubble before the Soviets destroyed it in the 1990s. Two mosaic panels from the Amber Room were discovered in Germany. They had been taken as souvenirs by a soldier and eventually surfaced in the possession of his family. This find seemed to prove that at least part of the room had survived the war. But it also deepened the mystery. If fragments had been smuggled out, could the rest of the chamber have been dispersed as well? Some researchers clung to the idea of a sunken ship. The Wilhelm Gustloff, the Kolru, and several other vessels were scuttled or sunk in the chaos of 1945. Any one of them might hold the lost crates in recent years. Divers claimed to have located amber fragments within one wreck, sparking a wave of excitement. But each time, the evidence failed to stand up to scrutiny. By now, the search for the Amber Room had become more than archaeology. It was obsession. Treasure hunters spoke of it in the same breath as the Holy Grail or El Dorado. Fortunes were spent on expeditions. Documentaries fanned the flames of speculation. Governments were accused of hiding evidence, of keeping the truth locked away in classified archives. The mystery seemed endless, each answer only birthing more questions, and so the legend of the curse grew stronger. It was said that anyone who sought the Amber Room to intently invited disaster, that its beauty, once a source of wonder, now carried a shadow, that the room itself had become a trap, luring men into its orbit only to destroy them. Rational minds dismissed such talk. To skeptics, the deaths and accidents were no more than the grim realities of war and its aftermath: typhus, car crashes, drowning. Heart attacks none required a supernatural explanation, and yet the stories persisted, because in the silence of unanswered questions, the human mind fills the void with fear. The Amber Room was once a masterpiece of light. Now it was a phantom of darkness, and with each passing decade, the searchers grew more desperate, the theories more wild. If the treasure was still out there, hidden beneath earth or sea, the question remained: who, if anyone, would be the one to find it? By the late 20th century, the Amber Room had become more than a lost treasure. It was a cultural obsession, a wound in history that refused to close. For Germany, it was a riddle tied to the darkest chapters of its past. For Russia, Its loss was not merely theft, but humiliation, a reminder of the devastation brought by the Nazi invasion, and for the wider world. It became one of the great unsolved mysteries of the modern age. The Soviet Union invested enormous energy in recovering it. Teams of investigators were dispatched across Europe, old witnesses were tracked down, interrogated and pressed for details. Mines were drilled, bunkers blasted open, ruins sifted stone by stone. Each expedition began with optimism and ended in frustration. The Amber Room seemed always one step ahead. A mirage that dissolved at the moment of capture. Then, in 1979, the Soviet government made a decision. If the Amber Room could not be found, it would be reborn. A team of Russian craftsmen and restorers was assembled. Their task was monumental: to reconstruct the chamber using traditional methods, piece by painstaking piece. The challenge was immense. Many of the techniques for working amber had been lost to time. The artisans had to relearn forgotten skills, invent new tools, and travel the world to source amber of the right quality and hue. It was a project that consumed decades. For over 20 years, craftsmen carved, polished, and fitted hundreds of thousands of fragments, guided by old photographs and the few surviving sketches. International donors contributed funds, German companies, in a symbolic gesture of reconciliation, provided support. What emerged was not just a reconstruction, but a resurrection. In 2003, after a quarter of a century of labor, the Amber Room was unveiled once more in Catherine Palace. Under the glow of electric lights, it shone with the same ethereal beauty described by poets centuries earlier. Visitors stood in awe, as if history itself had been restored. Yet even as the reconstructed Amber Room dazzled tourists, a question lingered: where was the original? For some, the new chamber was a triumph of human resilience, proof that beauty lost to war could be reclaimed. For others, it was a hollow echo, a reminder that the true Amber Room was still missing, its fate unresolved. The reconstruction did not close the mystery, it sharpened it. Meanwhile, rumors continued to swirl. Reports surfaced of secret Soviet archives that might contain evidence of the Amber Room's fate. German treasure hunters announced new discoveries in abandoned mines. Divers explored wrecks in the Baltic, convinced the amber still lay beneath the waves. Each time, headlines promised revelation. Each time, the trail went cold. One of the most tantalizing possibilities is that the Amber Room still exists, hidden somewhere in Europe, sealed in a forgotten vault, buried in a collapsed tunnel. It may yet wait to be uncovered. If true, it is perhaps the greatest time capsule of human history, a glittering chamber preserved in silence for nearly 80 years. And yet, there is another possibility more haunting, more poetic: that the Amber Room is gone forever, consumed by fire in the ruins of Königsberg, its golden glow rising one last time into the night sky before vanishing into ash. If so, then the chamber's power lies not in its survival, but in its loss. For it has become more than a room. It has become a symbol. A symbol of human ambition, the desire to create something so beautiful it defies time. A symbol of human folly, the greed that destroys what it cannot truly possess. And a symbol of mystery itself, that force which reminds us that not all questions can be answered, not all treasures retrieved. Perhaps that is why the Amber Room continues to haunt us, because we are drawn to the light of the unknown, even when it blinds us. Because the greatest treasures are not those we hold, but those we seek. The poet once described the Amber Room as solid light. Today, it is more like a shadow, a legend that refuses to die, flickering at the edge of history. Whether lost beneath waves, buried in stone, or reduced to smoke and memory, the Amber Room endures. And maybe, just maybe, that is its true destiny. Not to be found, but to remain forever sought after, not to sit silently in a palace, but to glow eternally in the human imagination. The Amber Room is gone, and yet it is everywhere. The fate of the Amber Room remains one of history's greatest riddles. Was it destroyed in the chaos of war, or does it still lie hidden, waiting to be discovered? Perhaps, even now, it glimmers in the dark, guarded by silence, by time, and by fear. If this journey into the shadows of the past stirred your imagination, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Terrifying Mystery Channel. Share your thoughts below. Do you believe the Amber Room still exists, or was it lost forever in the firestorm of war? History does not always give us answers, but the questions it leaves behind may be the greatest treasure of all.